Welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching Al Jazeera with our open-ended coverage of what's going on in London. Now, here is what we know so far. There have been 2 incidents at London Bridge and the nearby entertainment area, Borough Market. Witnesses say a white van veered off the pavement and struck several pedestrians on the bridge. There was also a stabbing incident at the market. The police are calling them acts of terrorism. And the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has called an emergency meeting, a Cobra meeting, for later today. Photographs on social media showing 2 men lying on the ground after being shot by the police in Borough Market. One man appears to be wearing something that looks like canisters strapped to his body. At least 1 person is dead. 2 arrests have been made. The London Ambulance Service says a further 20 people have been taken to hospital. Well, the incident began when a white van came across London Bridge at high speed, about 50 miles an hour, maybe 70 kilometres an hour, making its way onto the pavement of the west side of the bridge, hitting a number of people. Police were then called to neighbouring Borough Market, which contains bars and restaurants. London Bridge Station has been closed. People in nearby buildings have been told to stay inside. Mariana Hond with the very latest.
On a Saturday night, this part of central London is teeming with people. Emergency services and armed police responded quickly to find members of the public treating the injured as best they could. Witnesses say men drove this white van into pedestrians on London Bridge. They then reportedly got out of the vehicle and attacked people with knives on the bridge and in the surrounding area before escaping. Armed police shut down London Bridge and nearby underground stations. They then led dozens of people away from the scene with their hands above their heads. This footage was filmed inside a restaurant at the time. The panic and the fear clear in people's reactions as police tell them to take cover. It comes less than 2 weeks after 22 people, including 7 children, were killed in a suicide bomb attack at the end of a concert at the Manchester Arena. And just over 2 months since 5 people were killed and more than 50 wounded when a man drove his car into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge. He stabbed and killed a police officer before police shot him dead.
One thing that these last few attacks show us is the strain that the UK security services are under. The UK security services are some of the best in the world, but if you think about the numbers that came out recently, just a couple of days ago, it was revealed that the security services have around 23,000 potential jihadists on the radar. 3,000 of these are under active surveillance. The rest, the other 20,000, are considered residual risks. And if you consider that the last 2 attackers, Khalid Masood in Westminster and Salman Abedi in Manchester, were both known to authorities but placed on the residual risks list, you can see the size of the problem here. There are 19,998 other people like Masood and Abedi who the authorities simply don't have the manpower to keep tabs on.
The hunt for the suspects took police a short distance to London's Borough Market, where gunfire was exchanged, and then south of the River Thames to the Vauxhall area. Heavily armed police are now patrolling an ever-expanding police cordon as the hunt for the attackers continues. Mariana Hond, Al Jazeera.
Sonia Gallego, live for us on the streets of London. Sonia, worryingly for the Met, worryingly, I guess, for the government as well, all the people they're trying to get to, all the people they're trying to find here, unaccounted for.
Indeed, and it just goes to show how something like this is actually really a question of manpower as well, and the amount of manpower that is required to keep tabs on these situations. And if you're talking about surveillance as well, just sort of figuring out actually how there has to be sort of a team monitoring 24/7, and that is really sort of quite an onerous task for for any security force as well. Currently, we have a situation here where this area here, which is quite a sizable chunk of this part of central London, under lockdown as well. Now, in that under lockdown as well, you have two major hospitals, and a children's hospital as well under that lockdown as well. You have a main bridge that connects the north and south part of the city also shut down. You've got also London Bridge Station itself, a major transport hub connecting not only the overground but also the underground rail system as well. So all of this sort of under lockdown, so police can undertake all their investigations properly. We have, since we've been here, heard in the distance a few what seemed like explosions, most likely controlled explosions. Of course, that is, if investigators do come across any suspicious-looking packages, of course, that is the way they would normally deal with that sort of situation. But also, of course, the looking for evidence, every single scrap of evidence that can link any of the attackers, the suspects, with the crimes, or indeed sort of to a presence here at all. That is also absolutely crucial. So these first few hours around this immediate vicinity, really, really crucial that the police comb through this. And of course it is, as we've said, quite a difficult task. This is not a city which has a grid-like system. It is a city based upon layers and layers and layers of different history, and with that you've got the vagaries of that sort of shown in the city's topography here, where you have little winding lanes, part of its charm of course, but it's also quite tough to be able to navigate through. You've got alleyways which lead to sort of certain other areas as well, so really a very sort of tricky area to navigate through, and sort of quite a tough little urban landscape here for the police to manage, Peter.
Details of what's unfolding minute to minute, hour to hour, clearly still very sketchy. But given Westminster Bridge, March, given Manchester 2 weeks ago, given the history of the IRA in London going back to the so-called Troubles during the 70s and the 80s, the British police must have some sort of rapid reaction plan that they can roll out and then, I suppose, fine-tune as the incident evolves and grows.
Yes, that would be certainly a case where we've seen the police sort of very efficiently putting this whole area down in a lockdown, clearing it of members of the public. It is sort of really has been sort of quite surreally quite dead around this area here. Very quiet, no members of the public, where this would be usually, full of people enjoying any given Saturday night, especially now as the days get longer as well. And yes, sadly, there is that history that has enabled the police to be able to adapt their tactics to that. You mentioned, of course, the IRA attacks of the 80s as well. Of course, that is something that has been sort of built into how police would sort of react to any kind of attack like this. And of course, these other sort of attacks that we have been seeing, not just in Manchester, not just in Westminster rather, but in other cities such as Stockholm and in Nice, in Berlin at the Christmas market, deploying just the most basic kind of everyday equipment that one would use, vehicles. This is the truly frightening thing that the police are going to have to adapt to as well. Now that it has become almost like a modus operandi of certain groups or groups claiming those attacks, it is really something which is very difficult to be able to sort of go, okay, how is this attack stopped? Because these are very ordinary, commonplace vehicles and other material that is being used and exploited by these groups. So yes, that is something that the police, of course, are going to have to sort of change their tactic to as well. But exactly how are they going to prevent vehicles coming through is another matter altogether.
Sonia, thanks very much. Let's take it to Paul Brennan, another of our correspondents tracking this story for us. So, Paul, London police unsure if all the people involved in this attack have been accounted for.
Well, if they are sure, they're certainly not releasing that information just yet. I've just been checking in the last couple of seconds the Metropolitan Police's social media site, which is the way that they are issuing information at the moment, and they haven't updated it from an earlier statement, which basically gave the bare bones of what had happened on London Bridge, saying that at 22:08, that's 21:08 GMT, an incident was reported to them and they responded to it within 6 minutes. As far as what we are getting, though, is a lot more eyewitness testimony, basically putting more flesh on the bones of exactly what happened. And it does appear that the two incidents are inextricably linked. The van being driven across London Bridge from a north-south direction, effectively, from the north bank to the south bank, crashing into railings. And then it appears eyewitnesses talking about three men with knives going through Borough Market, a pedestrianised area full of restaurants and bars. It would have been full this evening, or on Saturday evening, as a result of the Champions League final taking place between Juventus and Real Madrid. Many people coming out to watch that game, that football match, on the screens inside those bars. And also a very difficult place for the police to actually get into using vehicles. They would have had to respond, the police would, on foot. One eyewitness, a man called Gabriele Schiotto, who is a documentary maker, has been identified as the person who has taken that photograph that we've seen a little previously of a man lying on the ground wearing what appears to be combat trousers, appears to have been shot by the police with what looked like metallic canisters strapped to the front of his body. Now, Mr. Schiotto tells how he was watching the football game. He's a Juventus supporter, came out of the establishment where he was watching the game, and basically this whole incident unfolded in front of him. That the police were chasing at least two men, and shots were fired, and that the two men fell to the ground. So very dramatic testimony from them. But the police themselves at the moment are not issuing any more updates from what they gave about half an hour ago.
And as Londoners, as the people of the UK wake up tomorrow morning, it's just coming up to 3:15 with you, still the weekend there, so we won't see those pictures of people not being able to get to work because London is in lockdown. The square mile, the city of London, financial global hub, that's quite close to where you're actually sitting at the moment, Paul. But that security operation still live, still ongoing, because they're not sure they've got everyone.
Well, if the intention was to try to disrupt the normal operation of the city, that will have a very limited effectiveness because, as you say, this is the weekend here. And the City of London is very quiet during the weekend period. The main office buildings are all closed. Most people work Monday to Friday. The Saturday night is a time when people go out. Sunday would be very quiet indeed, apart from tourists in the centre of town. So it's certainly not going to affect, to any great extent at least, the normal business of London. That said, and the other thing to point out is many people will have gone to bed unaware of what has happened in central London tonight. So the impact will take some time to come through. But the cumulative effect, let's say, of three terrorist attacks, what are being described as terrorist attacks by the authorities here, within the space of just 3 months, I think will be significant. And the other thing to put into the mix is the fact that we have a general election taking place this coming week here in the UK on Thursday, the 8th of June. Security has been one of the big aspects of that. I have to say it's largely been security of an international level. Nuclear weapons has been the issue that has dominated the electioneering. But nevertheless, the issue of homegrown terror or imported terror will certainly be a factor that is going to now loom large in the election as it approaches just a couple of days away.
And I guess for the candidates taking part in that election, there's a good chance perhaps that we might see after this what we saw after Manchester, the election campaign, not the election campaign being suspended to pause and reflect and to pay respects to the people who've been directly affected by what we're looking at right now?
It's certainly possible. I would hesitate to guess at exactly what the political parties are going to do. Don't forget, Manchester was some 10, 11 days ago. A greater distance from that attack to the actual day of the polls. We are now barely 4 or 5 days from the actual date of the polls now. It's very, very close indeed. A suspension of campaigning, I think, would have a significant impact on the way people intend to vote. It would certainly impact the way the parties are getting their message out to the electorate. So it may be that the parties are rather reluctant to suspend campaigning in the light of that. I think the other thing is the nature of the attack too. Don't forget, the attack in Manchester was an attack which appears quite clearly to have been aimed at teenage girls attending a music concert. And the number of deaths involved in that was larger on the face of it than the casualties that we've been told about so far here in the London Bridge attack. So there are some differences there that may mean that a different treatment is put forward by the political parties. But I say, as you point out, make no mistake, these 3 attacks in quick succession are likely to have an impact on the general election without a shadow of a doubt.
Paul, thanks very much. Well, as we were discussing there, UK leaders have been responding to the events in London. The British Prime Minister, Theresa May, expressing huge gratitude to the police and the emergency services who are on the scene, she said. She went on to say, our thoughts are with those who are caught up in these dreadful events. The UK's opposition leader, the main opposition party being Labour, Jeremy Corbyn, calling the attacks brutal and shocking. He went on to say his thoughts are with the victims and their families. He then thanked the emergency services. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has released a statement saying this. This was a deliberate and a cowardly attack on innocent Londoners and visitors to our city. He went on to say he condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms, saying there is no justification for such a barbaric act. An eyewitness working at a Borough market restaurant described what he saw.
With a knife, just push the people and kill it like they don't care about nothing.
You saw that?
Yeah, we was in front of them.
So how many people did you see?
I saw 3, but
3
they
with
say
knives.
it's more than 3. I don't know really how many people.
And how many people did you see injured?
Just 3 in front of us. We work in Borough market.
So was that 3 with the knives, or was that 3,
Yeah.
3 with the knives? And how
But
many
I think
people were injured?
3 people. Just in front of us. They don't care about nothing. Just going like this. They say they're crazy or they are drugs, I don't know.
Let's talk to Jim Walsh again from MIT in Boston. Jim, you were taking us through what you think the Metropolitan Police have to do now. This is still a live situation. We're being told in real time pretty much, just looking at Twitter, looking at Facebook, looking at social media, that some of the people they need to get to are still out there. So how do they get to them?
Well, I think it's following the trail. So you and I both discussed that they have that picture of someone that was shot who appeared to have canisters on his body. If he is in fact related to this, they will take DNA evidence. They will ID him. Having ID'd him, they will track his phone calls. They will get to his apartment or home. Once in there, they will look at his computer and then look for associates and then fan out to family and associates from there. And so it will go. It's about collecting forensic evidence and digital evidence, actually, and doing it as fast as you possibly can, and not saying very much along the way because you don't want to tip off people who might be associated with him. I think one of the big challenges that the British police face right now is, what do they say about the future? So in the Manchester attack, Britain raised its terror level alert, right? And then they decided to lower that terror level alert, which I thought was appropriate based on the evidence that they had. And then, unfortunately, now this happens. And so they have to ask themselves, are these two things related? As Paul pointed out, they seem really different, right? The Manchester attack seems much better coordinated, involves, more sophisticated weapons. This seems more pedestrian But one of the key questions I think they will be asking themselves is this related, and is there another shoe to drop? And I'm sure every man, every woman is on board trying to collect evidence to answer that question.
I know we have to wrap our conversation up, Jim, in a series of cascading ifs, but might the Metropolitan Police Force be hopeful that this guy with the canisters, if it turns out to be some sort of suicide device, and if he's cogent and he doesn't spend too long in hospital, if he has indeed been shot, might he be that thing that we report on occasionally, a bit of a rubbish suicide bomber, because they sometimes leave their mobile phone in their backpack. They maybe have their local tax bill shoved down a back pocket, something that nails their identity and saves the relevant authorities days, perhaps weeks of investigation.
Absolutely, Peter. The fact that if they're going to get him alive, that is huge. And if he thought he was going to die and then left a video or a written record or whatever, and we have had cases, we had this with the Paris bombing, where people thought that they were going down and they didn't, and they captured them, and then they ratted out other people. So that is, I think it could conceivably be very advantageous.
How much of this comes down to intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing before the event? Because just recently, we in Europe have been told there are literally thousands and thousands of these people who blip on the radar, but for some reason, understandably perhaps it's just purely a question of resources, the relevant authorities, be it in the UK, Europe, or indeed in the States, they cannot pursue and monitor everyone all the time.
Yeah, I think there are several issues in play here. And by the way, we're all human, right? So some people, there are going to be mistakes here, and they'll do an investigation. They'll probably figure out that they should have connected dots that they didn't, or could have done something differently. But I still have some sympathy here. So there are different pieces of this. One is, is it someone who traveled overseas, is connected to a broader network that maybe you should have paid attention to? Secondly, there are legal issues that have to be respected in a democracy. If a person hasn't committed a crime, you can't just go and arrest them because you think they're going to commit a crime. And that's part of the problem if terror networks are recruiting newcomers who have never done anything before. So I think there are a variety of issues here. But as you have said and I have said, I think we're going to have to wait and let the evidence come in. We are in the earliest of hours. But we should say a prayer and be thankful for the fact, as bad as this is, it was not a huge explosive that killed lots and lots of people. And if you ask my prediction, and I predict it now, London will be back to normal sooner than most people would expect, and it will persevere, and it will survive and win this round.
We're grateful for that word of caution vis-a-vis, claims of responsibility when they come out, if they come out. I just want to get your final closing thoughts, Jim, if I may, on the idea of intelligence sharing and intelligence leaking. Have your sources in the intelligence community told you that operationally things have changed dramatically just in the past couple of weeks? Point number one, New York Times, post-Manchester. The picture of the alleged bomber popped up, I think it was the New York Times, before it popped up in the UK. Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, she had quite a robust conversation with Donald Trump. Point number one. Point number two, Donald Trump telling the Russians inside the Oval Office, inside the White House, about what turned out to be Israeli intelligence, because he didn't know, apparently, according to Sean Spicer, that it came from Israel. But when someone like that does that at his level, or when the intelligence services leak to a paper, real people really die and real investigations are really compromised.
I agree totally with that, and I was totally critical of that. So, Peter, really, I would divide two different things here. So, what happened with Manchester, you will remember, also happened in 2005. Regrettably, tragically, U.S. officials leaked information then in the 2005 British attack, and then it happened again. Now, we don't know where those leaks came from. Did that really come from intel officials? Because I can assure you that political appointees within the FBI, within the White House and others, also had access to that information. We don't know how that got leaked. But one would think that having had this happen with Manchester, both media outlets and the bureaucracy itself would be more cautious. A separate, completely different question is the President of the United States. And as you talked with Max Abrams earlier, who I think is excellent, the President tweeted tonight something that, in my view, was completely inappropriate, trying to basically take advantage of a horrific tragedy to advance his own policy agenda. One does not know what he will say and what he will say to whom. But as far as the sort of normal leaks go, I'm guessing people are going to be a little more cautious given the recent history.
Jim, thank you so much for your insight and your commentary with us tonight here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, the US President Donald Trump taking to Twitter twice in the past few hours his reaction to that ongoing incident, saying we need to be smart, vigilant and tough. We need the courts to give us back our rights. We need the travel ban as an extra level of safety. Exclamation mark. Let's get more now from our correspondent Diane Estabrook, who's in Washington. So Mr. Trump here trying to dovetail what's still an ongoing situation on the streets of London with propagating policy out of the White House.
He did, and some are saying that he was tone deaf when he issued that statement. And he may have had second thoughts about it, because after he issued that Twitter statement, a few minutes later, about 15 minutes later, he issued another. He tweeted again saying that we stand with the United Kingdom, and God bless the United Kingdom. We're here to help you if you need it. We're also hearing from official Washington this evening. The Department of Homeland Security says it's monitoring the situation in the United Kingdom and is trying to get more insight from authorities over there. The U.S. State Department is condemning the attacks, calling them cowardly, and also saying that if authorities in the United Kingdom need assistance from the United States, that they stand ready to help them. We're also hearing from the embassy in London, the U.S. Embassy in London, asking U.S. citizens who may be in London this evening to stay away from those areas where the attack happened, also to be on high alert and to be vigilant.
Does this kind of incident, this kind of event, Diane, get more traction in the States because it's London? You know, London Bridge, it's iconic. The Thames, it's iconic. Everyone knows it.
I think it does. And keep in mind, too, that we're just entering summer. Schools are getting out. London is also a very popular place to travel in the summer months. And so people may be going over there. And so this does hit home. People may be going over there. They may have friends that are traveling over there. And so this is a time when people might be on high alert. And people you don't know might have second thoughts about going over there this summer after seeing a couple of attacks within the last couple of weeks.
Diane,
so big concerns.
Thank you, Diane. OK, here's what we know so far. That van, it veered off the road near London Bridge. It hit several people. Witnesses say a number of men jumped out of the van with knives. Shortly after that, loud bangs were heard at the nearby Borough Market. There are reports of multiple stabbings at restaurants there. London's ambulance service says 20 people are being treated for their injuries across 6 hospitals. The police have issued a run, hide, tell security advice to the public. The UK Prime Minister, Theresa May, will be chairing a special emergency response meeting early on Sunday. That's in just a few hours from now. Colin O'Dwyer was at London's Borough Market. He told us what he saw when police arrived at the scene.
Well, we were having dinner opposite the market, and it was all a bit of a mystery in the moment, of course. But what we did see was people running from within the market after we had just got up from our table after paying the bill. We saw a father and a son running frantically. We saw the bouncers and the security guards from the nearby restaurants and pubs running into the market and then running back out in pursuit of quite a large guy who ran into the pub right beside us. At this point, we're standing on the street corner. Then we saw a group of people running towards us down the street. We saw somebody spilling out from the pub, knocking over the chairs that we had been eating our dinner on. And we heard people talking about somebody either trying to stab them or stabbing them. A fellow who was standing beside me, at which point everyone started to run. The hysteria pretty much kicked in at that point, as you can imagine. We did hear the gunshots. Yeah, there was quite a few you're talking. I'm not going to pretend to be any sort of firearm expert, obviously, but certainly a lot. At which point we had run around the corner with the group we were with, and it did seem to be coming from either up on the bridge or from around the area that we were in. That was maybe 5 minutes after we had taken off, and after we had seen the kind of the ruckus, I guess.
Well, our London news editor, Oliver Varney, was on London Bridge just after the incident and described what he saw.
What I saw earlier was a number of people on the ground, seriously injured. I must have passed just as the incident had happened. They had what I would describe as serious injuries. There was a lot of blood. People were trying to treat them as best they could. They were trying to flag down emergency services that were coming past. The police response appeared to be quite quick. The area was immediately flooded with police vehicles. They shut down the bridge. There was a number of armed police that were quickly on the scene, and people were trying to treat the injured who were lying across the breadth of London Bridge, from the south side of the river to the north side of the river.
Max Abrams is an assistant professor of political science at the Northeastern University in Boston. He says the nature of what's happening in London makes such attacks hard to prevent.
It seems clear that we're dealing with a coordinated terrorist attack in two close by locations, very public areas. I think that these attacks are getting a lot of press, just as one would suspect about coordinated attacks inside of London. I still don't know what the status is in terms of the perpetrators. It sounded as if there were multiple perpetrators. There are reports that one is down, the one with the canisters, but the details are really sketchy. And I think that the most important thing that law enforcement is doing locally is making sure that the incident is contained and that all of the perpetrators have been neutralized. And I'm not sure at all that that's the case right now. There's a real sort of unfortunate familiarity in terms of the pacing of these attacks. 3 people involved in an attack is definitely, concerning because there are power in numbers. All else equal in general, the more people involved, the greater the potential lethality. The type of weapons used in this case seem rather basic. So my understanding is that a van was used on the London Bridge, and then there were some stabbings that happened after that. And so this is very much consistent with Islamic State's playbook, as well as, frankly, Al-Qaeda's playbook. Some of the leading theorists, like al-Suri, have recommended these kinds of decentralized attacks using, whatever the perpetrators have available to them. And so these kinds of attacks, precisely because they're available to really anyone who wants to commit this kind of a crime, are extremely difficult to prevent.
Paul Brennan joins us with more now. Paul, obviously everyone's trying to put together the jigsaw of what happened here. What's the latest information we have?
Yeah, the police have not issued an updated statement for the past hour since the first statement that they put out talking about one confirmed casualty and confirming the timing of the incident as being 22:08 when they first started receiving reports of an incident at London Bridge. That would be 21:08 Greenwich Mean Time for those people around the world trying to get a handle on the timing in relation to their locality. What they are saying, though, is that they have established a casualty bureau, but are encouraging people who are safe to contact their relatives if at all possible, and that would relieve the pressure on the casualty bureau. The casualty bureau really is only for those people who are really truly missing and are unable to make contact with relatives. So they don't want to be inundated with all and sundry trying to phone just on the possibility that their loved ones may have been in the London Bridge area during the course of the attack. As far as the actual chronology and sort of layout of the attack goes, the picture that's emerging largely from eyewitness accounts is that this van careered across London Bridge, mowing down, hitting people as it went, hitting several people, injuring several people on the bridge, and then came to a standstill just at the corner of Borough Market, this area that we've spoken previously about, which is a revamped, renovated old fruit and vegetable market, now home to many bars and restaurants during the evening, a very popular place for people to go out and socialise, both during the week and especially at the weekends. And it appears that either 2 or 3 attackers went through that market armed with knives, attacking people. Then were confronted by police officers. Shots were fired. The police have confirmed that shots were fired. What the police aren't confirming is how many people were downed by those shots. But pictures that we've seen show 2 people on the ground, and one of those photographs quite clearly appears to show a man wearing camouflage trousers and carrying what appear to be some kind of metallic canisters strapped to the front of his body. That's outside a pub called the Wheat Sheaf. It's a pub that's well known to people in that area. It's in that Borough Market area. And the operation to evacuate people from the area is ongoing, and the police operation to try and work out whether these people were acting alone or whether there are further accomplices to be rounded up is very much ongoing.
Thankfully, not on the same scale as Manchester 2 weeks ago, Paul, but I suppose if the purpose of this kind of incident is to sow fear and a certain unease, the imagery, the symbolism will live long in the memory. We've got this chap with gas canisters or canisters strapped to his body. We've got the SAS being flown in helicopters. We've got the River Thames locked off, locked down. There's no traffic on the River Thames. Large areas of the city cordoned off, people being told to stay indoors in hotels. Those images will filter through for days and weeks to come.
Indeed. As I was making my way here, effectively within 100, we were within 100 meters of the scene of the incident in this office here. As I was making my way here, obviously blue lights flashing throughout the whole of my journey, sirens wailing. This kind of thing spreads a sense of unease among the general population. You don't have to have been directly affected in the sense of being an eyewitness to what happened in London Bridge tonight to be aware of the kind of frisson that is created by incidents such as this, and the frequency of them. 3 attacks in the UK within the past 3 months since March certainly has a snowball effect, I would suggest, on the public sentiment towards this. We had the Westminster attack. I'll just double check the date. That was the 22nd of March, in which 5 people died, 6 if you include the attacker. A very similar, in some respects, attack to this one, a low-tech attack. A man driving a car across Westminster Bridge on this occasion, mowing down people, 5 people killed. A police officer then attacked with a knife and stabbed to death. Fast forward to now, the 3rd or 4th of June now, and it's almost an identical attack, although with multiple, it appears, assailants involved. A van, a rental van by the looks of it, being driven across a bridge, colliding with people, it appears deliberately, and then people with knives going into a crowded area with what looks to be the very deliberate intention of trying to cause as much mayhem as possible.
And we've got this meeting at Downing Street, well, at 70 Whitehall, the building behind 10 Downing Street. We've got this Cobra meeting, the Cabinet Office briefing rooms meeting. So we've got British Prime Minister Theresa May as we speak. She's in the back of a government limousine being ushered back, being driven back to Whitehall, or it's happening as we speak. So she's in there with the Home Secretary, the relevant security agencies, MI5, MI6. I guess by the time dawn comes to London, she'll be outside number 10, kind of delivering the same speech that she delivered after Manchester. Very difficult for her to strike the right tone, given that Manchester happened, and given that we're just a few days away from a general election as well, because she decided to go to the country in the election because she was riding so high in the opinion polls. So not only has she got to be seen to deliver the right message when it comes to keeping the country secure, she can't be seen to turn this into a big political issue.
Yes, I think it would be seen as extreme bad taste if the Prime Minister, Theresa May, just days away from that June the 8th election, tried to make some political capital out of this in a party political way, I mean. Clearly there is a message that she will be keen to push, which is a reassuring message to the general public. But if she seeks to score points against her rival opposition parties with just 4 days left before the election, I think it will go down very badly. As far as the COBRA meeting, this acronym for the Cabinet Office Briefing Room, she will undoubtedly demand answers from the intelligence services as to what they know, what they have been able to find out in the hours since the attack and up until this meeting takes place in the morning time at dawn, and also how this attack was able to be carried out. I mean, the intelligence services, the police, the security forces have foiled many attacks in the past months and years. Obviously, the details are very rarely released to the general public, but they say that they have foiled dozens of attacks, disrupted dozens of attacks. Nevertheless, the frequency, as we were talking about, of these 3 attacks in quick succession do call into question the way that the intelligence services have been monitoring the potential for suspects to act in this way. And I think the Prime Minister, when it comes to this COBRA meeting, where she gathers together police, intelligence services, the London Mayor will be in attendance, members of local authorities will be in attendance. It's a very broad-ranging church that they gather together for this. She will want answers.
Paul, thanks very much. Just to get you right up to date with what we know, as Paul was saying there, a live investigation ongoing. We have these reports saying that some of the perpetrators are still at large. We cannot independently confirm that. We've also had that picture of somebody on the ground looking like he's wearing something, and I stress, looking like he's wearing something that looks like a potential suicide belt. He was shot, reportedly, by the police. One of our contributors in the last couple of hours, as we've been rolling with this story for you, making the point that if he's alive, they want to get information from him as soon as is possible. So that person probably been shot, taken to hospital, of course. The hospitals are in lockdown. The police will be waiting to interview him. The river is closed. We've had the SAS reportedly being flown in as well. Various areas and regions of London in a state of lockdown. We'll keep you right across all the developments coming to us there out of the British capital. OK, we will pause just for a couple of minutes to take a look at another big story we're following. Leaked emails from a senior United Arab Emirates diplomat show he worked with a neoconservative think tank to coordinate cyber attacks on Qatar and Kuwait, accusing them of backing terrorism. A computer hacking group says it got the emails from the inbox of the UAE's ambassador to the US. Patty Culhane reports now from Washington.
You wouldn't think the ambassador, who works out of the United Arab Emirates Embassy in Washington, and a far-right pro-Israeli think tank housed in this nondescript D.C. building would have much in common. But thanks to newly hacked emails, we know they were working closely together to undermine Qatar and Kuwait in the eyes of U.S. officials. Zaid Jalani broke the story.
As far as the contents of the emails, I think a lot of what they show is that there's a very intense level of cooperation between the Emirates government and sort of right-wing neoconservative think tanks close to the Trump administration and close to the Israeli government.
In addition to revealing plans to discredit Qatar, the emails highlight past and upcoming attempts to embarrass the country. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates headlines an event in Washington, D.C., where he raises the idea of moving the U.S. military base from Qatar to the Emirates. In an email exchange with the Emirati ambassador, he's asked to, quote, give them hell. A few hours later, Qatar's official news agency was hacked, and false stories about the country's ruler supporting Iran and Israel were broadcast by Emirati-based channels. The emails highlight an agenda for a conference hosted by the Emirati government and the Washington-based lobbyist firm, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are among the items up for discussion at the June 11th meeting. Other emails show a concerted effort to get negative stories about Qatar planted in the U.S. media. And one email from 2013 shows Ambassador Youssef Al-Otaiba also lobbied top Republican leaders in the U.S., hoping they would support the coup that ousted Mohamed Morsi in Egypt.
The federal law stipulates that people who engage in any lobbying effort that includes payment of money, when money changes hands, then all of these statements should be made public. And if you look up the open source, you will see that in the year 2014, the UAE was the top payer of money with $14 million.
Officials at the UAE Embassy in Washington and the FDD refused our request for comment on this story, which lays bare a secret campaign to discredit Qatar and others in the eyes of the Trump administration. The UAE and Qatar disagree on foreign policy in Palestine, Egypt, and many other places. It's now clear just how far the UAE is willing to go to try and make sure the United States sides with them. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Let's bring in Khalil Jashan. He's the Executive Director of the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., on Skype. Khalil Jashan, how much damage has this done to relations?
I think it has done a lot of damage and most probably will contribute to more damage in the future once all the information is revealed and the implications, the political implications of all this information becomes clear to all parties that have a stake in this problem. Clearly, I think the most serious damage is in terms of the credibility of the government and the embassy of the United Arab Emirates here in Washington with regards to its role. Finally, we have evidence that it has been engaged, if you will, in campaigns of disinformation against Qatar that began with a series of events here in Washington and spread most recently last week to the region. Second, it also revealed some serious information with regards to the relationship between a government, the UAE, that has been complaining about Qatar having relationships with the Israelis, yet it works, very closely, in close proximity with some of the most ardent or pro-Israel radical extremist groups here in Washington. And
in your
third,
mind,
I think
just to interrupt you for a second, Khalil Jashan,
Sure.
if I may, in your mind, is there an appetite on the part of the UAE to now start rebuilding that credibility? That was the phrase you just used.
Oh, I'm sure they will. That's a natural reaction on their part. They most probably will deny what I have said or what other commentators have been saying. They will even deny probably the existence of the emails that have become public today. But building credibility, I'm not sure. I think the damage is going to be long-term this time.
And when you talk about more damage being revealed when we get more information, I'm interested to know what kind of information you're thinking about and what more damage it may cause.
I think the issue with the involvement of lobbying groups and individuals, prominent individuals, like the firm that's run by Robert Gates, the former defense secretary, with his partners, Steve Hadley and Condoleezza Rice and others, the role they played in this, I mean, it was kind of strange for somebody like Gates, somebody with his credibility and, if you will, the caliber of the positions he has filled in the past in the U.S. government to become the recipient of orders, from clients. The nature of the relationship with whom is still very vague. I mean, is he really a registered agent of the state of the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, or not? Why was he being asked to basically make pronouncements, raise hell, if you will, or give him hell with regards to changing U.S. policy vis-a-vis Qatar, a strategic ally of the United States that is housed to the largest U.S. base in the region, and that base being the target of that particular effort. So the nature of that involvement remains unclear and most probably will be clarified with further revelations down the road.
OK, we'll leave it there. Khalil Jashan in Washington, thanks very much. Let's just get you back to our top story, the events in London. We understand the US President Donald Trump has called Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, offering condolences over what he describes, according to this report, as a brutal terror attack. The London Police Force saying that the Counter-Terrorism Command is now leading the investigation into the events in London, and they're also saying, and this is not confirmed, but they are also being reported as saying that they believe 6 people died in addition to 3 attackers.
With those who are involved and those who are concerned about loved ones in the area, they should contact our Casualty Bureau, which is open on 0800 0961 233. So again, if you're worried about somebody in the area, 0800 0961 233. Looking forward, we are, of course, reviewing our plans for policing stance across London, and over forthcoming days, people can expect to see more police resources across the capital. Finally, I'd ask the public to be vigilant and contact the police if they've got any concerns.
Assistant Commissioner, can you just tell us, is this incident completely over now?
Our current belief is that there were 3 attackers, but this is early on, so we've still got some inquiries to work through to be completely confident about that.
There were 3 attackers in the vehicle, so the attackers from the vehicle have all been killed.
So this is a protracted incident that starts on the bridge and finishes in Borough Market, and we believe 3 people were involved, but we've still got some more inquiries to do to be 3 people were involved, but we've still got some more inquiries to do to be 100% confident in that.
Can you tell us anything more about the attacks, where the people were killed?
No, you're asking for a lot of detail there.
Yeah.
We're still getting to the bottom of exactly what's gone on, the number of casualties, and it's still quite a complex scene. As you'll have understood from what I've said, we're still dealing with the fact that we suspected that at one stage to be explosives, albeit that's now been ruled out. Last question.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the people who are involved in the operation to bring down these terrorists?
So the public will be aware that we have strengthened our armed policing presence across London in recent years. So we've got more armed response vehicles to hand, and it's those armed response vehicles who are out driving around London day in and day out to protect the public. They responded quickly, bravely confronted these 3 individuals, shot them, and they are dead. That's finished, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
London Police Force there being short and sharp and to the point, saying they believe there were no more than 3 attackers. Something of a contradiction going on there. When that spokesman there for the police was questioned, he seemed to be saying that there might, and I'm stressing the word might here, might have been 6 attackers, because at one point he seemed to say 3 attackers left the van at some point, and then there were 3 other attackers who had left the van when it started what the police are describing as quite a long journey from the northerly reaches of London Bridge, across the bridge, from north to south, across the Thames, and then ending up in the Borough Market area, saying as well they're reviewing their policing plans and telling Londoners to expect to see more people, more police on the streets. They're also saying 6 people died. That's confirmed. There are no question marks over that being asked right now. 6 people died, in addition to 3 attackers. In the prism of reporting, I'm going to wrap up those words, in addition to 3 attackers, with a big health warning until we get, I suspect, another news conference or a very brief, thrown-together news briefing from the relevant police authorities, because they need to get a better handle, I think, on what's going on here. Let's take you live now to London and our correspondent, Sonia Gallego. Sonia, so we're getting a little bit more information. 6 people died, not 1, but we're not getting a definitive take, it would appear, this hour on how many attackers there were.
No, indeed, Peter, as the investigation is still very much firmly going on in this area here, in this cordoned off area, and we've seen very much the activity that's been taking place here, the police vehicles that have been coming to and fro between the into the area of investigation currently behind me, which is towards down there where you have Borough Market. And of course, it's quite a complex area. As we've been talking earlier, we've mentioned the fact that the area around Borough Market and indeed London Bridge is not just a very simple area to navigate through. It is not a straightforward grid system that you have here, but you have a complex set of alleyways and small roads as well, which all have to be combed through finally by investigators in order to be able to extract as much information as is possible, with, of course, the deliberations on whether it was 3 or 6 attackers. Of course, that fog of information that comes in the wake of these attacks is always something to be mindful of as well, as is the police warning to people further coming in here about around London about such attacks, because, of course, these low-grade kinds of attacks, the kinds that we've seen not just here on Saturday, but also in Westminster, in Stockholm, in Berlin, in Nice. These kinds of attacks are possibly the ones that cause most fear because of the unassuming nature of them, and also of the amount of harm and horror that is perpetrated just by simply using a vehicle for such a deadly end, as well as the other instruments, knives, etc. Also not forgetting, when relating to the other attacks, similar attacks that had taken place in other European cities as well, you're taking a look at those perpetrators as well, very much people, men who had become disassociated from the societies in which they were living in, and frankly also as well, not necessarily they weren't necessarily on the radar as well, but had petty criminal activities which they were linked to. So with that, of course, if indeed they were groomed or taken on or submitted themselves to such heinous acts, then this is really sort of a very troubling development, of course, in the nature of these tactics and how they're used to such a deadly end. And this is something, of course, that the police are looking into as well, and as they continue this investigation throughout this part of London, Peter.
OK, Sonia, thank you very much. Sonia will be back in the coming hours with the latest information as we continue to cipher our way through what we know from what we don't know. If you're just joining us here now, the London Police Force just in the past few minutes or so confirming that 6 people lost their lives in that incident taking place between the northerly reaches of London Bridge and the Borough Market area. The significant thing about Borough Market is it's a covered market. It's an old-fashioned road layout that goes back probably several hundred years by now, thinking about it, actually, because Shakespeare's theatre, the Globe Theatre, is just along the river there, not very far from where we're talking about. Several people have been injured. Large parts of London, sizable chunks of the British capital are in lockdown, including the river. Lots more news on that for you with Rochelle at the top of the hour. But from me, Peter Dobby, and the team here in Doha, thanks for watching. Do stay with us.